Good day, everyone. For this video, I'm going to get into how to resegment your streets. This is often done within crime analysis to get our number of crimes per street calculated, oftentimes with law of crime concentration. With that, this is probably the fourth or fifth time I've actually recorded this one, encountered issues along the way, and to make it easier and try to streamline it, I've re-recorded. With that, you might wonder, well, we have a street layer. What's the purpose of essentially dissolving it, then breaking it or separating it based on the intersections again? So with that, if we open up an attribute table for a street layer, in your geocoding data, the key part is to have address level information from the left and right side. This allows you to address match and geocode and get the points on the map. If your data don't have that, or your layer does not have that, your crime or whatever outcome you're trying to geocode based on an address can't be matched. So you end up having more streets or segments than crime can actually occur on. So with that, if you're thinking about the distribution of crime across streets, you're going to have more streets and it's going to be inflated, even though crime can't necessarily occur on those. So you can see here we have over 18,000 streets within this file, but not everyone has information on it, so you can't actually match your data to it, which is problematic. If you're going down this route in terms of analysis, I would highly recommend removing data that don't have identifiable address features that allow you to geocode information. Another example is, let me scroll down, is our unnamed streets. Obviously they're within Little Rock, and I can highlight and you can see some generate behind you, but they don't have a name, they don't have address level information, so this can throw off your average block distance calculation, which we'll get into here in a bit, but also it misrepresents, again, the opportunity or potential for crime to be address or geocoded to a street segment in Little Rock, for example. With that, we don't actually have 18,819 segments that crime can occur on, so we need to take care of that. In this video, I'm not going to go through and clean the file. I'm going to show you, if you don't, some of the issues that you can find on the back end. Another example, and let me clear out of this, is if we hop down to where our eyes at, our interstates as well. So keep in mind, and a couple are highlighted behind us, there's interstates that go through some of our larger cities, and this is problematic because many interstates have underpasses and overpasses. So in our 2D feature here, it looks like there's an intersection. In reality, the street is going above or below the actual interstate. If you're looking at crime data, most of the time you're not going to have interstate-based addresses on it, especially depending on crime type. If you're doing street level analyses, I'd recommend getting rid of interstates because of that as well, and I'll show you why this is problematic in the long run if you were to leave them in. But for now, let's go ahead and leave them in and move forward. But ideally, the first step is we need to get rid of all of our boundaries, our intersections. Really, we're going to go from 18,819 down to 1. So extending from some of the other geoprocessing videos, we can do this through a dissolve. So you can use your analysis tools up here. I still have it up here from a prior video. And again, I'm making this as a standalone video versus adding these to some of the other tutorials with the tools, because I think this one deserves a bit more attention when it comes to crime analysis and how people use this. Really need to understand your street layer before going further in terms of attaching crime to it, because you could misrepresent the data. And with that, when you're running analysis on the distribution or clustering of, you could be misrepresenting the base denominator of potential of crimes by street segment itself. So with that, if we could just click dissolve here, we want to input our streets. So we're going to specify this as our street layer. Output, it's already going to my geo database. Funny wise, it has the 4 after because this is actually the fifth time I've done this. But with that, I don't want to dissolve anything at this point. A cool part is, and the textbook gets into some of these options of, you can actually calculate statistics when you're doing dissolves, which is super, super handy. For now, I'm going to show you just one example, and it's going to be shape length. So it's going to give me the sum of the street lengths. Once they're all dissolved, it's going to be in feet given the coordinate system, projected coordinate system it's already in for state plane of south in Arkansas. So with that, I can go ahead and hit run. And it's now going to take all of these 18,000 segments and turn it into just one line. So if I turn that one off, open the attribute table for our newly dissolved file, you can see that here. Cool. So even if I select this one, you can see that it's going to highlight the entire line because it's connected as one layer itself now, or one row. With that, and we haven't gotten into this in other videos yet, we want to modify our feature, our layer here. So if we go to the Edit tab, this is where you have options to modify, and it's pretty handy depending on what you want to do. And similar to our analysis, you have a lot of options in here that at different points you'll likely use. But for now, we're interested in the Planarize option. So if you hover over it, it tells you what it does, and it's truly doing what we want. We want to take our line feature and break it based on the intersections. So if we click that, as you can see, it wants you to select what you want to have the breakpoint as. I only have this dissolved file showing in my table of contents. I already pre-selected it, so if I did not select it and I had to say clear, it doesn't show anything here, and it gives you a drop-down option of how you want to select it. But since this one only has one, it generates for us, and I know this is going to work, so we're good to go there, and I can go ahead and run this now. The key part is, and I've forgotten to do this in a prior video, and another reason why I led to re-recording this one is, keep in mind it's going to generate in the same attribute table. So you're editing this attribute table. So the key part at this point is you want to save, and save often. So you already have the option up here in the same toolbar. Go ahead and click save. It's going to make your life a lot easier. You want to save all edits. All you did was add rows here, and you can see we just have over 19,000 now. And you might wonder, well, the original street file had 18,819, and this one's just over 19,000 now. So where did the extra 200 number come from? So this is our new street length. So if I sort these and I just zoom in on one of these, and let me grab my Explorer hand. So if I zoom out a little, you can actually see this segment here is split or separated because it intersects the interstate. So that's where I say it's problematic, because the actual street segment extends beyond. So the street itself goes past the interstate, but it's being separated based on this intersection here. And that's one example of why I would recommend removing interstates if you're trying to do a crime to street segment analysis. It's going to give you false breaks. So with that, keep that in mind. We're going to keep going forward for now because I'm just showing you how to do it. But keep in mind, you want to spend time on your layer file to clean up. And I will say I learned how to do this primarily through some instructions that Elise Woodich up at Temple provided me. Made life a lot easier going through this. I took them from the desktop version into Pro. For years, I didn't know how it was done. It wasn't too descriptive in any of the studies. She helped me out, and now I've done it a few times. So with that, now you might wonder, well, we have a street layer now that's dissolved at intersections or breaks. So how do I get my crime data attached to that? Now there's a few different ways. Now if you think about our robbery data that we have, it's offset, and let me just zoom out a little so we can see it. It was offset by 20 feet. So if we zoom in, it's not specifically on the street center line. Again, if I knew I was going to be using this for a spatial join of points to lines, I would geocode it with the street center line. But for the project I was using the crime data for, it had an offset so I could specify the neighborhood or block group that it was part of. So with that, in our analysis tools, we actually have some options in here that are pretty handy. Ideally, what we want to do is generate a near table or just identify what it's near. So we're going to take our robberies and identify the ones that are near it. So we want to snap essentially these points to the nearest XY coordinates of the street itself. With that, I have to admit I've done this before, so I have experimented. I found the near option to work better than the near table. Yes, the table's giving us the same information as the near part, but when I went to re-display the XY coordinates, it was giving me a lot of issues, and that's where I ended up running into a lot of hurdles in re-recording, because even troubleshooting on the fly was not generating anything worthwhile. I had more luck with the near part to it, and the near part adds it to the layer already. The table does it separately from it. On your own, feel free to experiment with both of those, explore which one works better for you. With that, I've already run it on this layer here, so I'm just going to show you the process of going through and then how it generates within the attribute table for us. So if I were to click near, all I want to specify here is I want to put my input features as my robbery, and the near feature is the dissolved street layer that we just created. So if I go ahead and do our street layers that are dissolved, I want the location. If you hover over the information eye, it gives you an idea of what it's doing. So I would click location here, and you can see down here what it's generating for us. You can turn some of these on and off if you don't want them, but we're good. It gives us what it needs, the distance to our nearest XY based on the street layer itself. So with it, I've imagined I clicked run here, and I'm going to open our attribute table here, and you can see, oops, just exit that one. If I scroll to the end, the nearest XY coordinates for us. So you can see the information we have. Again, like I specified, I had issues in the past with doing the near table. Keep in mind, for this, I generated it through the near part of the analysis versus using the generate near table. The way to get around that and how I did it was I then exported this table because I actually want to display these XYs here. So I did an export table and I save it to, and I'll do it again. So example, near robbery XY. And it's just taking this attribute table and it's going to save out a table for us. Click OK. And it generates down here for us. So if I exit out of here, I'm going to open this up and I'm going to show you it's the same thing we just had open. But now I want to actually display, not based on the latitude and longitude here, but our XY at the end. So if I right click, display XY, this is where you need to change. For me, it's the near X and near Y. And I'm just going to save this as another one itself, even though I haven't saved one like this. I just added a number in just to make it easier for this example. Our coordinate system, since this one is projected, I'm going to go ahead and change this down here to our current map. So it puts us in the state plane, Arkansas projected south one, so we're good to go there. And I'm going to hit OK. And let that run. And now you can see that it's generated some points for us. And keep in mind, since we generated this, we actually need to export this layer out. So it's a separate point layer at this point. So I'm going to do robbery, street, center, example. Hit OK there. And now it's generating a point layer for us. I can turn off the one that we just removed from the table. I can remove that table just to clean up. And if I zoom back out, keep in mind those are ones that had the -1 attached to them, so that's why they're getting thrown out. But here we have some really cool analysis if we zoom in of it not being offset anymore. So if I turn these off, and now I can go ahead and I'll show you how to do another join option. So again, if we're in our analysis toolbox here, I want to do a spatial join. That's probably at the top. Spatial join. And I want to join the robbery counts to the streets itself, so the line file. So I want to do my street lines. I want to join based on the dissolved file here. Output feature, it's going to our geo database. I'm going to do robbery to streets. And I only want one-to-one, so it can't go to separate streets itself. And I'm going to do an intersect. You could do, like before, I could have, since I knew it was a 20-foot offset based on the geocoding, I could have done this with just grab the ones that are within 20, 21 feet, and it would give that count to the nearest street itself. There's a couple different ways, but this is just one of them. With that, I'm going to keep it as intersects. You could put a distance here of just 2 feet in case it's off by a little, but since we did nearest to it, I'm going to keep intersects and we're good to go there. I'll hit run and it's going to generate a new street for us. Actually, I did it backwards. So if you notice there, when I did robbery to street, it actually joined it backwards. So I wanted to put up my target feature here as our street layer. Keep in mind, I make these mistakes all the time when I'm trying to just get through it quickly. So take your time, go through it. I want to change this one to the robbery. So my target feature that I want to add the data to is actually the street layer itself. I'm joining the count of robberies to it. With that, I'm going to put correctly at the end. And I want to keep 1 to 1. And I still want to keep it in intersection 1. So we're good to go there. Hit run, and we'll get a new street layer at the top once it's done. Or here we go. And if I open the attribute table, it will have a join count. And if I go descending order, you can see how those robberies are distributed across our streets. So if you open statistics, it will show you how many were actually matched in the 247. That's what we were hoping, because the other 12 that were kicked out didn't have coordinates. So we know where those went. So we're good to go there, but you can see in terms of law of crime concentration, if you want to, I consider it more of like a risky block. If you pull in some risky facility literature as well, we have 247, and we have, I was hoping that would do the math for me there. Oops. Let me open the calculator real quick. I was used to Excel doing an auto generate for us. So if we did a 9 plus 5 plus 4 plus 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, that's about right, 40 divided 247. We see that 10 streets account for 16% of crime, and the 10% of 10 streets is well below 1% of all streets. So we already see some concentration of robbery in Little Rock based on that. Keep in mind, since we only had 247 robberies, an easy way to think about this is, so we have 16% of robberies occurring in 10 streets. What I would also do is take our 10, divide by 247. So if we think about equality, it's a bit different. We only have potentially 247 streets that crime could occur on. So if we think about it that way, the 10 streets out of 247 equates to 4% of our streets accounts for 16% of our crime, or robbery in this case. Still clustering, still concentration, so we do have concentration of robberies in Little Rock. We have 4 streets. Pretty cool to see that. And another part that I wanted to bring up before turning off this lecture is, in the same file, so if you keep in mind, we do have the street length. The key part that I wanted to highlight that we haven't touched on is, typically when we make buffers or other types of distance analysis, that people use the average block length, average distance. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks out. If you're leaving in streets or street segments that don't have a name, don't have geocodable information such as address to and from on the left and right, those distances are still part of that average calculation. So ideally you would remove those to get your average block length in terms of how crime or other data are being geocoded through your address locator and that information. So keep in mind that is important to calculate when you're trying to find your average street lengths. Spend some time really focusing on cleaning up a street layer. Yes, it's time intensive, but it pays off in the long run. With that, if there's questions, please let me know. I know I did some troubleshooting on the fly at the end, but we're all bound to have some of those issues pop up when we're going through it. So again, if there's any questions, comments, concerns, please reach out to me. But this is a quick way to understand our data within ArcPro. Take it from streets, attach crime to the streets, and then look at the potential concentration of crime per street. With that, take care.